Welcome to Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio, News Talk 1180 for the best in Saturday Talk Radio at 1 o'clock, and on 1230 KGEO at 10 o'clock on Saturday, and for the very best in Wednesday Talk Radio on 1410 KERI on Wednesday at 1 o'clock, and now on 1000 KKIM in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Your host is Clay Koerner, and I'm Marty Pay, and behind the big board, we've got the man himself, Greg Held, who holds this thing together for us. Hey, Clay, that was a fantastic show last week with Tobin Smith from Fox Bulls and Bears and our own state senator, Gene Fuller.
Had a good time, didn't we?
Yeah, they were giving us a lot of predictions for the coming year.
Yeah, unfortunately, they're all wrong.
Well, I don't know about that. I think today's show is going to be a little more sobering, though. In the second half, we have the regional director for the Make-A-Wish Foundation, Catherine Ansbeck. But on the phone with us right now, we have the author of an incredible new book, Living Witnesses.
A series.
Yes, a series of books. Triumph Over Tragedy. Monni Must. Monni, welcome to Taking Care of Business.
Thank you very much. It's Monni.
Monni. I knew I was going to say that wrong. I knew it.
She
I apologize.
told us before the show.
That's okay. Believe me, I've been called many things. I have a very different name, so I understand.
What an incredible book. Wow.
Well, thank you very much. I'm actually a portrait photographer, and the series of books are portraits of Holocaust survivors living all over the world, in Europe, Israel, Canada, and also all over the U.S. There is a small bio that goes with each portrait of the person, and that was written by my daughter Sabrina, who is a writer.
Well, you have to compliment Sabrina for us because looking at these stories, they're fantastic, and it's all very heartwarming, especially when you attach it to the picture that goes along with the little story for each individual person.
Yeah, she's definitely has a talent for pulling at people's heartstrings, and also she has an ability to take a situation and just describe it, and you go, wow, where does she come up with those words to describe what's going on here?
Sure. Now, this is a series of books. Your website, and give our listeners your website, first of all.
The website is Living Witnesses, plural, livingwitnesses.net.
Okay, livingwitnesses.net. Okay, now on the website, and I highly recommend that website. There's a lot of great stories there. It says Living Witnesses, Faces of the Holocaust. So Faces of the Holocaust was the first of the series of books?
Living Witnesses, Faces of the Holocaust was my first book that I did, and that is of Detroit survivors.
And there were 92 of them?
I live in Detroit area, and what prompted that book was in November 14th of 2007. My daughter died suddenly, and it just buckled me. And I was terrified that she would not be remembered. And so I stopped working. I'm a portrait photographer. I stopped working for about 4 months. And I realized that if I turned to Holocaust survivors, because I knew of survivors, that they would, because it happened so many years ago, and between 1939 and 1945, that they would be able to tell me and assure me that my daughter's memory would be remembered, and I would remember the way she smelled and the way she talked and things about her. So I turned to survivors, and the Jewish community in Detroit is a very close-knit community. So I turned to these people, and they were just my lifesavers. And when I got finished with that first book that I did, Faces of the Holocaust, I turned to my assistant, Linda, who went with me at every portrait that I've done through these last 4 years. And I said, I'm not done. And we turned and we traveled all over the world seeking out survivors. So the next series was actually called Living Witnesses: Triumph Over Tragedy, because essentially that's what happened with me. Is Faces of the Holocaust was what I looked like after my daughter died. And Triumph Over Tragedy is, although you can see the wear and tear of the grief on my face, I have been able to function again.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where the Triumph Over Tragedy came from.
I got to tell you, this is one of the prettiest books I have ever seen. It's got gorgeous photography and nice stories about the people. You've done a tremendous job.
Well, thank you very much. There are a few reasons with every survivor, it works as a connector amongst people, these books. In other words, there'll be somebody in Israel that recognizes somebody who lives in California, where you guys are, or somebody who is in Germany. What we have done is we have given each person's name, their maiden name. In the case of a man, we give them his original name. We put down their homeland and the city that they were born, and where the person lives now. And in addition, not all survivors, and this is a misnomer, not all survivors have a tattoo on their arm. The only people that had tattoos on their arm with the numbers are the people that were in certain death camps. So the people that do have a tattoo, we put down their tattoo number. So really what happens when people look through the books, they will see, wow, I knew a Goldberg and this is my city that I was born in, and we have connected people who were looking for people, didn't know if they were alive, and they've called each other from all over the world.
Wow, so that's kind of a unifier that way. Our guest by phone is Monni Must, author of Living Witnesses: Triumph Over Tragedy.
So, Monni, you've done a trilogy of books, I understand.
Yes. This last series, the international series, is a set of 3 books. The first one is an international, and the next 2 volumes are the U.S. volumes. The reason that we had to divide it up, and it's sold as a set of 3 books, was because if it was one book, it would be too heavy for anyone to carry around. As it is, it's 15 pounds of books. It comes in a box set. In addition, there is a DVD slideshow that comes with it that tells the way that we found survivors and how we went about interviewing them and photographing them.
So you
get the whole backstory there.
Your survivors are all in the Detroit area in that one book, is that correct?
The first book, Faces of the Holocaust, are of 92 Detroit survivors.
Have you done any? Go ahead.
The next 3 books that I have, the set of books, are 300 survivors.
Nationwide?
Living all over the world.
Oh, all over the world.
Yeah, that particular volume you have there, the first one is just the U.S.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, one thing that I was looking at on your website, you were talking about your daughter, and that's a very touching story, and I can see where it would motivate you in this way. This is a story not only for Jewish survivors, but it's a story for anyone who suffers and overcomes.
Exactly.
So, in my case, my own daughter, my oldest daughter, was going to Cal Lutheran University years ago, and she put together a Holocaust Day that you and I were talking about. And there were a number of survivors there. The thing that surprised me the most, talking to some of these survivors, and I will never forget that day. I think it's one of the proudest moments I felt as a dad that my daughter had put this together. But I was surprised that this is the first time for a lot of those survivors that anybody had ever talked to them about their experience. And I thought, you've got to be kidding me. I mean, these are walking history books. Did you feel the same kind of thing when you were interviewing these people?
Well, this is what happens. Here you have a group of people who move. They lost their families in most cases. They didn't know a language. They moved to a different country. They didn't know the language. They were plopped into an area where they had to completely redo their lives. They had no family, they had no country, they had nothing, they had no friends. So what happens there is they got married, they found jobs, they started to have families, and if you allow the grief and the turmoil to take over your mind and to be at the forefront, you don't function. So what happened was a lot of these people, not all, but a lot of these people had to kind of throw all that stuff in the back of their mind and not let it come out all the time, because when you talk about those kinds of things, it levels you.
Sure.
And so now what has happened is, as they are older, and of course, as we all realize, that generation is disappearing, they are allowing themselves to talk about it now, because now they have grandchildren, and so many of the cases, there were children of these survivors that would say to me, "We didn't know any of the story.
Sure.
Would you mind burning a disc for us and sending us the interview that you did with my parents?"
Let's pick up there after a break, okay? We'll be
Sure.
back. We'll be back in a moment on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio News Talk 1180.